afternoon. The meeting will now come to order. Welcome to the November 19th, 2020 meeting of the City of Raleigh Appearance Commission. My name is Corey Bates and I am chair of the commission. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are conducting this meeting using a remote electronic platform. I would ask for your patience today as we proceed. There may be slight delays as we transition between speakers, participants, and presentations. The Commission is charged to provide guidance, advice, and recommendations regarding the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the City of Raleigh. The members of the Commission represent a varied field of expertise and interest in the quality of design in Raleigh. Now I'd like to ask staff member Lee Stevens to briefly explain for the participants how we will be conducting today's meeting. Lee?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Lee Stevens, and I am with the Raleigh Planning and Development Department. Today's meeting will proceed very similarly to our regular meetings with a few minor adjustments. If at any time a participant has an issue with technology, please send a message to our moderator, Erin Morton. The chat function has been disabled for this meeting for all participants and the commission members, except for the ability to message Erin if you have technical difficulties. For each administrative alternate case, a city staff member will provide a brief introduction and presentation. The applicant will then be acknowledged to present their case and have 15 minutes to do so. Speakers for the applicant are asked to provide their name and address for the record. Following the presentation, the commission members will be given an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and of staff. The commission will then hear from any other participants who would like to speak on the request. As mentioned previously, members of the public had to sign up in advance to participate. When all comments from the applicant, staff, and other participants are complete, the commission chair will bring the item back to the table for deliberation. The commission members will then deliberate on the item and review the findings listed in the applicable sections of the UDO. Following deliberation, the commission chair will ask for a motion, which will then take the form of a recommendation to the planning director for action on the request. The motion can be a recommendation for approval, approval with conditions, or denial. The commission may also vote to defer the case to the next regular meeting, typically in order to receive additional information. The commission will then vote on the request. I'll now turn it over to the commission chair to conduct the administrative alternate review.
Great, thank you, Lee. Tonight we have 3 cases in front of us, as well as I believe we have another one coming before us just for, I believe I'm trying to find my space here. Yeah, so we have four total cases. So case number 1, I'll call them in the order which they came in, and the first one is AAD 23-20 Summit at Sawyer. I believe Charles Dillard is going to go ahead and present this for the staff.
Thanks, Corey. AAD 2320 includes multiple properties. The general location is Sawyer Road, near Garner Road and Peterson Street. The applicant is the City of Raleigh, and the Tim Grissinger, I will note, is the contact and representative for each of the next 2 cases. So this is the Bill 2 alternate, so I'll read the definition and the intent. The Bill 2 is the area on the lot where a certain percentage of the front principal building facade must be located, measured as a minimum and maximum setback range from the edge of the proposed or existing right-of-way, whichever is greater. 2, the required percentage specifies the amount of the front building facade that must be located in the Bill 2, measured based on the width of the building divided by the width of the site or lot. The intent reads as follows. Number 1, the Bill 2 is intended to provide a range for building placement that strengthens the street edge along the right-of-way, establishing a sense of enclosure by providing spatial definition adjacent to the street. 2, the building edge can be supplemented by architectural elements and certain tree plantings aligned in a formal rhythm. The harmonious placement of buildings to establish the street edge is a principal means by which the character of an area or district is defined. 3, the Bill 2 range is established to accommodate some flexibility in specific site design while maintaining the established street edge. We'll note that in C, general requirements, number 1 does apply to each of the next two cases as well in some locations. So I'll give you a brief summary of the alternate request here. So the applicant is proposing to develop 6 new apartment buildings with a combined 154 dwelling units. The development provides 179 parking spaces, which is 10 above the minimum required by the UDO. The site is not located within the floodplain, but the southernmost property is within 200 feet of the 100-year flood zone. The property is zoned residential mixed use 3 stories. The development does provide a network of pedestrian paths and an internal centrally located recreation area, including play area. The applicable build-to is that of the apartment building site. The build-to is 10 to 55 feet, 70% of which must be occupied by building width on the primary street and 35% on the side street. The applicant seeks an alternate to the primary build-to for building 1 on the attached plan sheet in your documents. We'll note the building occupies 63% or 7% below the required 70%, and an alternate to the side street build-to for building 6. The building occupies 28% or 7% below the required 35%. At building 1, the proposed amenity area is approximately 28 feet wide, which combined with the building width's 112 feet approximately, brings the combined building 1 build-to coverage to 140 feet or 79%. At building 6, the applicant does not propose additional amenity area. The proposal does meet the 30-foot corner build-to requirement at all locations. At building 1, the applicant proposes an open amenity area, including pedestrian path and gazebo. At the location of building 6, the applicant does not propose an alternative design, but it should be noted that a stormwater device precludes the placement of amenity area along the northern edge of the building 6 lot. The site is otherwise fully wrapped by sidewalks and is approximately 0.2 miles from the Walnut Creek Wetlands Center and Greenway. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Any questions from the commission for staff? Okay, none being requested. Let's go ahead and let the participant, or let the participant go ahead, applicant, go ahead and present their case. Tim, is that going to be you? And could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, this is Tim Grissinger, 112 Pipewood Drive in Cary is my home address. 5410 Trinity Road, Raleigh is my business address. Yeah, I think Jennifer was gonna run with this request. She's our attorney. She did set up the slide, and is that correct, Jennifer?
That's right, Tim. Thank you.
All right, sorry.
Thank you, everyone. As Tim just said, my name is Jennifer Ashton. I'm a land use attorney with the firm of Longleaf Law Partners. For the record, my address is 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302, Raleigh, North Carolina. And as Charles said earlier, the applicant for today is the City of Raleigh. I'm actually appearing on behalf of the developer, who is Solstice Partners, LLC. And I'm joined on this presentation with the development team, which includes Tim Grissinger, which you just heard from, and Mike Zaccardo. They are both from the Timmons Group. So a brief history of the project before I dive into the specific requests. This is intended to be an affordable housing complex. The City of Raleigh has contributed loan dollars to make this project a reality. Once it's constructed, the project will have 6 new apartment buildings and a total of 154 dwelling units. Thank you, Charles. He already pulled up the slide for me. Charles gave you a pretty detailed summary already of the 2 requests we are making, but I'll go over them again quickly. The first request is to the 70% build-to requirement along the primary street. We are seeking a 7% administrative alternate so that building 1 comprises 63% of the primary street build 2. We're 7% below the requirement in the UDO. However, with the amenity area that we are proposing near building 1, that gets us up to 79%. I will be speaking in a moment about all of the amenities that we are proposing for this site. This is going to be a highly amenitized community. Request number 2 is to the side street build to. We are seeking a 7% administrative alternate, so that building 6, which is located more towards Carnage Drive. Building 6 will comprise 28% of the side street build to. So again, we are 7% below the requirement there. I will be focusing in on the green space amenity area located near Building 6 and kind of discuss the reasons for not proposing specific amenity features for that area. Charles, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is an overview of the site plan. You will see that there are boxed areas in red. Those are the 2 areas that we are going to be focusing on today. I'm going to do some blow up slides in a minute to give you a little more detail because this is kind of hard to see but I wanted to give you a big scale view. One thing to note, down by Carnage Drive, which is towards the south of the property, the bottom part of the slide, that is where Building 6 is located. And I just want to point out, so everyone can keep it in mind, there are multiple single-family residences immediately to the east of Building 6. So that comes into play and that has importance when we're discussing the amenity area down by Building 6. If you could, Charles, if you could go to the next slide for me, please. Okay, let's start with Building 1. This is more detail of the Building 1 area and the amenity proposed. This is where we are, this is the 70% build to requirement. And we are making up 63% of that with the actual Building 1 area. And we are adding the amenity area, which is to the west of Building 1 on this slide. You will see that the amenity area we're proposing contains a gazebo and also a pedestrian walkway that leads back to some, I think those are mail kiosks in the back. This site was, this particular parcel is a difficult shape. We had to fit a lot of stuff in a small area. And we think that we have accomplished the intent of the build to requirement here with the addition of the amenity space. But again, just given the size of this particular parcel and the amount of things that we had to fit in there, we are asking for some design flexibility here with the numbers in the UDO for build 2. If you could go to the next slide for me. Thank you. And this is the site plan detail for Building 6. Before I jump into Building 6, I do want to point out towards the parking lot, which is labeled Lot 2 on your slide, I want to point out some of the other amenities that we do have on this site. The first amenity, which is the one to the left or to the west of the playground, that is a picnic pavilion with 2 grilling stations. We also have 2 playscape areas. They're divided by age groups, one for the little kids and one for some of the older kids. To the east of the playscapes, we have a gazebo area and then some extra green space there. And then in addition, it's not shown on this slide, but it's on the big site plan a few slides back near Building 3 and Building 2, which is to the east of this slide. We also have another picnic pavilion with 2 grilling stations and an additional gazebo area. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, so Building 2 and 3 are to the east of this site, and there is that picnic pavilion there and a gazebo as well. One other thing I wanted to note, just with respect to pedestrian connectivity, we have sidewalks going throughout this entire property, throughout the community. We wanted to make this a very pedestrian-friendly site, and we think that we have accomplished that. So with respect to Building 6, thank you, Charles, going to this building in particular, Down on, that is Carnage Drive. That is a side street. So building 6, we are not meeting the side street build to. We only have 28% of building coverage and we're short that 7%. To the, I believe it's the east of building 6, we do have what we call an amenity area. It is an open field grassed area. We are not proposing to have any specific amenity features in that area. We thought long and hard about this as we were designing the site, and in all honesty, there is a single family home located immediately adjacent to that grassed area. And our fear was if we put something like a gazebo or a picnic pavilion, those have a habit of being noise generators, and we wanted to be respectful and sensitive to the fact that there are single family homes located right next to that area. There were some stormwater devices that were located in that area. We can talk about those more in a minute if the commissioners have questions about those. I think Tim told me yesterday that maybe one of those has been removed from that site. But again, just as to why we're not planning or proposing any amenity features in that area is, again, the close proximity to the single family residences. But we do believe that we are still meeting the intent of the build to by adding the green space. If you could go to the next slide for me, Charles, please. Thank you. I wanted to provide the commission with some photos of typical amenities that are used in these similar type communities by this builder, just to give you kind of an understanding of what this will look like. The photo on the left-hand side of your screen is a photo of the 2 playscape areas. Again, these are in other communities, but these are typical of what you will see on this site. So we have the 2 playscape areas, and then across the street is one of the picnic pavilions. That picnic pavilion does have plantings and landscaping around it. It's kind of hard to see just given the tininess of the picture, but there are plantings there. The photo on the right, this is a good representation of what the picnic structure will look like. I wanted to show you one with a grilling station, just so you could kind of see how that is oriented to the picnic pavilion. This photo is not great because it does not show landscaping or plantings around it. Ours will have landscaping and plantings. Again, I just wanted to show you what the grilling station would look like. Charles, if you could go to the next slide for me. Thank you. The photo on the left, again, is a typical playscape area and a picnic pavilion. You can see in this photo there is landscaping and plantings around the base of the pavilion, and that is what is being proposed here. And then a photo on the right-hand side is just an interior view of one of those picnic pavilions. So you can kind of get a sense when a resident is standing under the pavilion that is what they're going to see. Charles, if you could go to the next slide for me. Thank you. And this is a typical of the gazebo areas that we are proposing. Again, we have a very nice structure with some benches and some landscaping around the foundation. It's a very attractive gazebo. And Charles, if you go to the next page for me. I'm sorry, the next slide. Thank you. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. We've kind of covered them throughout the presentation, but these are the criteria that the commission reviews when deciding whether to recommend approval for administrative alternate. I did want to point out that, as I've said before, I think that we are meeting the intent of the Build 2 requirements. We are providing amenity areas and green space where we are not meeting the specific building coverage requirements. And we are making sure that there is significant pedestrian interconnectivity throughout the site so that everyone is able to not only travel within the site easily, but also reach the amenity areas easily. With that being said, we would request that we get a recommendation of approval to the planning director so that we can move forward with this great project for the city of Raleigh. And I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Ms. Ashton. I appreciate that. Any questions from the commission or the applicant?
Yeah, this is Chris Roberts. Thanks, Jennifer, for the presentation. I do have one quick clarifying question. For building 6, the 28%, is only the building frontage and not the amenity area or the green area to, I guess it's plan east. I think
I believe that is correct.
building.
Yes, I believe that's correct, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission for the applicant?
Yeah, this is Adam. Jennifer, could you talk a little bit about why you all just want to have grass next to the Plan East amenity area adjacent to the parking lot in front of Building 6? I see that in some of the other adjacent, neighbor adjacent areas, you have what you're calling amenity area with gazebos. And I noticed you said that you wanted to respect them and their, privacy, not having folks right up against their fence, fine. But I'm just wondering why just grass?
Yes, so the playscape area, which is and the picnic pavilion, they do border those single family lots. Those single family lots are long and narrow. So down by Carnage Drive, which is where this grassed area is located, the actual single family home I'm talking about is very close to Carnage Drive. So if we were to put an amenity in that grass area, we would be very close to that single family structure. There is not a similar space requirement or space issue as you're traveling north on the lot, getting closer to that playscape. There is more space in between the playscape amenity and the single family home. Again, we were trying to be sensitive to the fact that that single family home is located so close to this grassed area. Another reason that we decided to stick with grass, there is not really an area in this site for like a dog walk. We wanted to provide the residents with that type of an amenity where there could just be an open space. You will not see that anywhere else on the site, and we thought that this would be a good location for that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was looking more at the amenity area proposed up by Building 1 with the gazebo next to the June A. Cooley property.
Oh, okay. So your question is, why are we not proposing something else up there?
Oh, no. It just looks like a similar condition right next to a house with a gazebo.
We'll take a look at the map real quick. Yeah, the structure, it's a little bit different orientation-wise. I see your point. I understand that gazebo may be located a little more towards the back of that single-family home. I don't have the exact dimensions. Our concern was with Building 6, we would be placing that gazebo potentially on this, like adjacent to the side of that single-family home.
Yeah.
And we didn't want that to be a noise nuisance to them if somebody came to the gazebo and happened to have a radio or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was just trying to kind of suss out what the rationale was with some of these. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Martha. Is there anything that would preclude you from putting plantings other than grass, maybe just along the, like close to the fence line along Building 6 to help maybe maintain an open grass area for part of it, but a little bit of screening for that house, maybe shade trees?
Oh, along the property line or along the entrance drive?
Along the property line, yeah.
We did not contemplate that. There are street trees along the entrance drive in the left-hand side of that entrance drive as you're getting towards Building 6. I don't believe any street trees were proposed for the grass area, just because there were stormwater devices located in there. That may have been the reason no trees were proposed. And Tim can probably comment on that more.
Yeah, hey guys. So Jennifer is correct. And Adam, I would like to kind of, I guess, briefly talk about your statement prior to Martha's. Would you, the up there on building 1, that site is, quite small, and we had to provide a certain, so this whole complex, the city of Raleigh requested that each lot stand on its own, and there's 3 separate lots of this project for amenity space. Lot 1 is extremely small, and for HUD requirements, we had to put the amount of, the amenities on that lot. And yes, it is tight. That gazebo is in close proximity to the adjoining house. But honestly, there's really, we didn't have any really, we didn't have much room to do the required amenities that are required on that lot. And then kind of going to your statement, Martha, we, as Jennifer had mentioned, that area of amenity space behind Building 6 was previously designed as a bioretention area. We did have, we have a dual function stormwater system out here. We got underground detention, and we had above ground for water quality. We're taking everything underground now, so that opens that area up for more usable amenity space. As Jennifer mentioned, we proposed, our thought process was to retain that and plant grass there as opposed to any vertical like trees or anything such as that. We are proposing trees to the left side of that drive off Carnage. I spoke with the developer yesterday, and if that was something that the council would like to see, street trees to the right of the drive, we would be fine with that. Again, our intent was just to have good established growth of grass in that area, considering the size and just the amount of non-grassed area on this property. So that's kind of where what we were thinking behind the area on Carnage Drive. But we wouldn't be opposed to landscaping it up if that's what the council wants to see. So.
Do you all have a little bit more of a landscape plan that kind of shows what your intent is?
We do.
It would be nice to kind of see the landscape, a little better idea, as well as kind of some images of the existing house.
Okay. Aaron, can I share my screen? Do I have that capability to add a imager?
This is Aaron. Unfortunately, the only things that can be shared were previously uploaded, and share screen duties remain with Lee. You are able to describe it as best you can.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is kind of the same with Building 6, with both Adam and Martha have kind of alluded to, and I guess I as well. I'm trying to understand a little bit the relationship of the adjacent neighbor's house. It'd be nice to kind of see an image of where that is and where it's placed, if there's a fence adjacent to it or not, how the grass ties into their yard, what kind of landscaping looks like. And then, furthermore, I'm assuming that there's kind of a required amount of parking that's required. Are we at the minimum amount of that? Is there any opportunity to maybe create a little bit more of a amenity space along the road there by removing some spaces, or are we kind of at our minimum now?
Yeah, we met the affordable housing parking standards that the city of Raleigh has in the UDO, which is 1.1 spaces per unit. We are above that a little bit just because there's a need for parking even on these sites. 1.1 space per unit. We were happy to achieve more than that. So I don't think necessarily to remove any parking would be good if that's what you're asking, Corey. But and to add some in that location. What was your question? Was more so to remove some, correct? Where we stood with that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a couple spaces removed, would that help kind of create a little bit of a landscaped amenity area or something to kind of soften up, what little amount of building you have, but maximum amount of asphalt and grass.
Right. So touching base on your landscaping question that you had first, the in between, I don't know, on my screen it's a little blurry, and we apologize for that. I don't know if it's like that with you guys, but so behind, directly behind the building, there's parking, and then there's an area that will be planted with the approved streetscape with parking lot trees along that area. So I think we're proposing about 3 or 4 trees in that island right there to the left of the entrance drive. And again, you know, to the right of the entrance drive, we're not opposed to adding some additional trees in that location if that's what the council would like to see. But then, you know, going back to amenity space, I think for the best interest of the site is to leave as much, you know, kind of retain the parking that we have, just for the benefit of the people who will be, you know, housed in these apartments. So, but again, landscaping, yeah, we can throw additional landscaping over there. And there is a fence structure in between our site that's currently installed. We'll probably have to repair some of it because I believe it's on our site. It might be on the adjoiner site, actually, but there's fence around the perimeter of these property lines that you see here, to these adjoiners. So there's fencing, and there's some existing foliage as well, on the adjoining properties. But that's about it, to be honest with you, out there right now.
Thank you. Any other questions from commission? Okay, if not, I believe there's nobody from the public here to speak. Is that correct, Lee?
Yes, that's correct.
Being none, I'll go ahead and close this and open it up just for discussion amongst the commission. I guess, you know, my feeling is that I think building 1, you know, I think they've done a pretty, you know, good job. We've seen similar conditions recently to where we kind of, you know, they're limited with the driveway access. There's a little bit of strip. They have put a gazebo in there, sidewalk, made it accessible. I think they've done a pretty good job with that, in my opinion. I think once we get looking at building 6, it's a little bit harder for me to justify without seeing a little bit more landscape plan, kind of idea of what their plan is to do there. I guess I would like to see a little bit more of what, you know, maybe some photos of what the adjacent neighbor, where their house is placed and how this will affect them. A little bit more landscape plan so we have a better idea, showing some of those trees and the island and those kind of things. Open for discussion or what their people's thoughts are with that.
Yeah, Corey, I agree. You know, I feel like as usual, I'm wanting to see more detail with what the amenity spaces look like. And then I think it's really important with this project because these amenity spaces are so close to the houses, just like Jennifer mentioned. I think it is really important to understand, is that gazebo, I mean, it looks like it's like almost in the driveway of the neighbor's house, the building 1 gazebo. And then I just had some other questions about that building 1 gazebo. Like, can it be in the same plane as the building? Like, why does the sidewalk kind of jog in front of it like that? Just some, you know, if we're trying to create an edge, I'd love to see, like, how is that gazebo creating that edge, that plane? And if it's not able to do it, can it be done with plants? And then on the building 6 section, I think, like you said, it's really important to be able to see what's going on there. Because if there are trees at the end of those parking lot spaces, can we continue those on either side of the entry, and have that repetition and that wall that might give the eye the feel of a build 2 that's not there? especially because it's like 6 feet up in the air. I think it will add to that, the importance of that. And, you know, my first thought was, yeah, since you have 10 extra spaces, can you kill the two of the spaces on either side down there and widen that? And maybe it's not just one tree, but it's more of a more thoughtful landscape wall where that parking lot is, and then repeat it on the other side. And, you know, understanding, again, there's that house right there where they're proposing the grass strip. It seems like it was a good idea maybe not to put a pavilion there or a gazebo there, but maybe some more thought or details about what is going to happen there would be great.
Adam, I agree with pretty much everything that you said, and I'm cheating a little bit and looking at Google Maps and iMaps, and there's actually a really large tree in that grass planted area right next to the house that we're talking about. That, I mean, I don't know the health of it, but it looks like a pretty nice specimen. This is for building 6, sorry. So I'd be curious to know if that tree is planned to stay, and if not, why? Because I think it actually sets up with some other trees down that street, further down the street. But, you know, creating some sort of an edge with some landscape along Carnegie or Carnage makes a lot of sense. And then back on building 1, yeah, I don't know what the right solution is, but just looking at iMaps, the edge of that gazebo is probably 10 to 15 feet off the side of that house. And so is there any way to pull it up so it would be adjacent to the front yard of that adjacent lot rather than right next to the house? Can you push it to the back? I'm really not sure what the right answer is or what's even possible, but I would like the applicant to consider that.
This is Catherine. I agree with the comments that we need a little bit more information. I think precedents from past projects are good visual information, but just having what are we actually going to be seeing on this site in a comprehensive site plan, and maybe zooming in on these details that are, you know, making a case for how these alternatives are working. I think, you know, it's hard to see, I know in this presentation a little bit, but even the documentation we were sent, it's a little bit blurry, and the clarity of really understanding, it's hard to decipher what exactly we are looking at. So I think that would be really helpful to take some of this feedback and look at it, even an elevation of the building that continues into the gazebo, just so we can really understand it, or some of the proposed landscape.
Corey, this is Charles. I just want to note that the applicant did submit high-res documents. I'm not sure why the documents are so blurry for everybody that you're seeing right now, but we do have higher-res versions, which obviously we will share at a later time if requested.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Charles. I think it would be a lot better to see them a little higher res, and I thought I'd seen them a little higher res prior to this, but I think even that being said, I think there's been some good constructive comments about just landscaping and seeing additional information, whether it be landscape, some context of the adjacent neighbors and where the gazebo lies, where that tree along building 6 and the new and the existing house, where that lies. Any other feedback from the commission? Any other thoughts?
I was just going to say, I like Chris's idea. That looks like a pretty, like, moderately healthy willow oak, and there's already a curb cut there, so it seems like the grade may not change much. So it seems savable, or at least in the realm of savable.
right? I think, I would propose that we kind of hold this off till the next meeting and see if we can get a little bit more information. If that would be all right with the applicant, and consider, just I'd rather have this kind of keep this open. I think it's close. I think it's just a little bit more detail that we'd like to see. I think if we can get that, I'd rather go ahead and hold this off for a meeting, if we can, and have it come back. Then that's just my opinion.
Hey, Corey.
Yeah.
Corey, this is also Corey. Just one quick it's a more generalized comment. We're looking at here on building 1, and I think the whole point of the code is to kind of reinforce that building edge as it relates to the street. And I think it's important for the commission to sort of send a clear message on what we're actually looking at. And I think sometimes we get a little bit distracted by just saying we need more clarity, and which I don't disagree with. But I do sort of disagree with the gazebo comment, because I do think that they are trying to achieve the intent of the ordinance. And so I don't want to send the message that they weren't trying to sort of achieve that intent. And so, because I do think that given this situation, there's not a whole lot else you could do. So as it relates to building 6, I do agree with a little bit more information on how the landscape could reinforce that building edge is what I think the more information is really sort of intended to accomplish, at least in my opinion.
I completely agree with you, Corey. I think that's right. Building 1, like I said, I think contextually it would be nice to see, where that gazebo is placed in relation to the building. But, again, I don't think anybody said it needs to be here or there. I think the idea of it is a good one to meet the intent of what they're trying to do and meet that amenity area. I just want to make sure, I'd want to make sure, being the user, that, they're good stewards of, where the placement is, so it gives the least amount of negative effect to the adjacent neighbor, and that they've thought about it. But building 6 is my biggest.
Yeah,
I just like to see more.
I agree with you, Corey, on the gazebo. I mean, that's not where I would put it, but that's what the intent of the code is meant to represent.
That's right.
I agree. I'd probably push it back, but that's not necessarily what we're asking them to do. So
right. So I'd put a motion to kind of defer this case to our next regular meeting. Any thoughts with that? Any second?
I'll second that. It's Chris Roberts.
Any other comments? Okay. All in favor? If we can't see you, we need to hear you.
This is Will. I'm in favor.
Great. Okay, opposed? Okay. We'll defer that. And if you can get with them, or Charles, and get with them and see if we can get them. Now, before we do move on, I want to make sure that they have the feedback that they need to be able to come back. And I guess I would ask Jennifer, Ashton, and Tim, do you feel like you have enough information from the commission?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I guess just to clarify, up there along building 1, there's not any placeholder for where that gazebo is located, I could slide it further back so it would not be adjacent to that property to the left, west plan view. That would not be an issue at all. Like Charles has said, we're trying to meet the intent of the code. But yes, that placement could be adjusted of that gazebo. And then I guess behind building 6, we can absolutely provide better illustrations as to, plantings in the area of the amenity space. Again, as I previously stated, the developer is not opposed to, if that was a condition you guys have, to plant that, and kind of like Adam said, mimic the left side to the right side of the drive. There's no opposition as to that. But yeah, I do understand of what you guys are looking for. When would the next date be to reconsider the plan again?
Our next scheduled meeting is only to hear quasi-judicial cases. That'll be on December 3rd. Chair, are we having a meeting for the second Thursday in December? Have we discussed that yet?
We have not discussed that yet, but I would assume, I think that's the 17th. I would assume that we would.
I assume so too. So I think I feel confident saying that it would be the next opportunity.
Okay. So just to kind of give you guys some history, this is our last hurdle through ASR, if that matters. I mean, speaking for the client and for everybody, all involved parties, we would like to get this resolved as soon as possible. Would y'all consider just having conditions on? Could y'all have conditions on an approval as to just kind of guide us as to, one, moving the gazebo back so it's not in such close proximity to the adjoining property owner, and 2, behind building 6, just, showing more streetscape planning or additional plantings in that area, if that would appease you guys, I guess is my request.
I think our recommendation is at this point to see a little more information with the landscape idea, maybe take a look at a couple of parking spaces or see what you can do there to help
Gotcha.
Make that a little bit more of an amenity space. Now, I'd leave it up to staff to see. I know that we do have a quasi-judicial meeting on the first Thursday of the month, and I don't know. I think what they've been trying to do is not to hold both types of meetings in one meeting. If there's only one quasi-judicial, we might be able to put it in that slot, but I'll leave that up to staff, and maybe you can get with staff and discuss that.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Jennifer, do you have anything to add that I didn't, mention on?
No, Tim, you covered it. Thank you. I was wondering the same thing, if some conditions could be possible just to move us along, but they've already taken their vote. So, but thank you, everyone, for considering this.
Thank you all. We'll just move on. I guess it's the next case, which is your case, AAD 24-20 Toulon Place. And Charles, I believe you're going to go ahead and present this one as well.
That is right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
So this is also Build 2, so I'm not going to read through the definition or intent, and we'll just begin with the summary. We'll note that the applicant here is not the city, it is BB Redevelopment LLC and Passage Home Incorporated. The applicant is proposing to develop 7 new apartment buildings with a combined 200 dwelling units. The development provides 220 parking spaces, 20 beyond the maximum required by the UDO. The property is zoned residential mixed use, 3 stories, RX3, excuse me. The development does provide a network of pedestrian paths and an internal centrally located recreation area, including play area. So I know this is just up the street from the previous case. And do want to note that the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency does have, I believe, more stringent parking requirements typically than the UDO. So just want to flag that as an item for discussion, or if it comes to that. The applicable build to is that of the apartment building type. The build to is 10 feet, 55 feet, 70% of which must be occupied by building width on the primary street and 35% on the side street. The applicant seeks an alternate to the primary build to for buildings 1 and building 4 on the attached plan along Bragg Street. An amenity area is proposed along Bragg Street, the length of which is approximately 34 feet. Thus, the combined average length of building and amenity space is approximately 159 feet, or 45%. Additionally, the applicant requests a corner build to alternate for building 1 at the intersection of Bragg Street and Sawyer Street, as the building is located approximately 61 feet from the corner. The site is located adjacent to a greenway entrance at the Chavis Way Greenway, which provides access to Chavis Park in downtown to the north and the Walnut Creek Greenway to the south. Any questions if you have them?
Any questions for staff? Being none, we'll go ahead and open it up to the applicant. Tim and Ashton and Jennifer, is this yours as well?
Are they on mute?
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
There you go. All right.
We're here. For the record again, my name is Jennifer Ashton. I'm a land use attorney with the firm of Longleaf Law Partners. My address is 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302, Raleigh, North Carolina. We're here today on behalf of the developer, Solstice Partners, LLC, and I am joined by Tim Grissinger and by Mike Zicardo, both with the Timmons Group. By way of history of this project, this also is an affordable housing complex project. We'll look at the site plan in a little more detail in just a minute, but there will be 7 new apartment buildings. They are going to be 3 stories each, and there are going to be 200 units total. One thing to note, given that there is HUD financing and some other state funding associated with this, there are heightened ADA standards with respect to this site, and that does come into play with our requests for the administrative alternates. So Charles already changed the slide for me, and he did a great job summarizing our requests. We have 2 requests for this. I want to focus on Bragg Street. We'll look at the site plan in an aerial in just a moment. But both of our requests relate to the frontage along Bragg Street. There's some unique topography along that street that I'll talk about more in a little bit. But the first request is to the 70% primary street build to. We are meeting 35% for the buildings along Bragg Street. With the amenity space that's being proposed, staff has calculated that we get up to 45% of the required coverage, but we are still short. Request number 2 is relating to the building frontage that has to be located within a certain distance of the corner of a street. We are talking about the corner of Sawyer Road, which it's going to be a new roadway extension there as it adjoins to Bragg Street. Because of the location of the amenity area, we had to put the building facade back 61 feet from the corner. So we are not meeting the UDO requirement of 30 feet back from that corner. But I'll describe in a moment the necessity for doing what we did. So if I could get to the next slide, please. This is an aerial of the site, just to give you kind of an understanding of the roadway connections around the site. We have Sawyer Road, which currently ends in an intersection. That is going to change. There is going to be a new cut through all the way to Bragg Street, and there are going to be sidewalks lining both sides of the road, which will greatly increase pedestrian connectivity in that area. We also have Garner Road, which is shown on this photo to the west of the site. And then we have McMacken Street to the south of the site, and again, Bragg Street up to the north of the site. I wanted to talk briefly about two items that you can see pretty well. You can see one of them well on this aerial. The other one is a little hard to see. Bragg Street has unusually steep grades. It's been a big challenge as we were designing this site to deal with those grade drops as you're heading towards South State Street on Bragg. Starting at the intersection of Garner and Bragg and then heading towards South State Street, there is actually a 30-foot drop in grade as you're traveling along the frontage of this property. That really matters when we're talking about building placement, parking space placement, and amenity space placement, which I will get into more in a little bit. But I just wanted to point out that this is an unusual site with respect to the topography. Another thing that I wanted to point out on this aerial, we are right next to, this is next to the Sawyer Road side. We are next to the Greenway Trail. Conversation did occur with staff about whether we could create a new Greenway connection directly connecting this site to the Greenway Trail. That we did take a look at that. Tim worked very hard to try to figure out a way to make that work. Ultimately, it was impractical. It wasn't feasible. And the reason being, when we see the site plan, there is building 5, which is located closest to the Greenway. And there is another 30-foot drop in grade at that location, which when Tim, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when you designed the potential stairwell and ramp area to get a new Greenway connection, it ended up being 30 to 40 stairs just because of the steep grade drop. Tim discussed this with staff, and it was not a practical solution. So just to note, there is another Greenway entrance that already exists right on Bragg Street. It's very close to this property, so it would not be a burden for any resident to be able to make it to that Greenway Trail. But I did want to point out to the commission that Tim did work very hard to try to accommodate, another Greenway connection, and it wasn't feasible. But if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, here is the overall site plan. I want to talk just generally about the amenity space in this site. We do have, down by building 1, which is the southernmost building. I'm sorry, not the southernmost building, the one closest to the amenity area. We do have 2 playscapes, again, for different age groups, and we have a picnic area with 2 grilling stations. We also have a large grassed area. The 2 amenity spaces behind building 1, they are actually separated by a retaining wall. Again, that grade drop along Bragg Street necessitated us doing a retaining wall there. It was just a very steep drop. I think Tim told me the retaining wall starts at 5 feet and then it actually goes up to 7 feet just to accommodate the grade change. But there is a railing along that retaining wall. So there is a nice playscape area, a nice grassed area behind the playscapes that children can run and play. No danger of falling. There will be railings there, so they will not be falling down into the other amenity area. The amenity area south of that retaining wall, we have left as a grassed area. The thought process there is twofold. One, we wanted to provide a community event space. So if the neighborhood wants to have like picnic in the park, community dinners, community lunches, or movie night, they would have a green space to be able to go and do that there as a community. There really is no other space on this site that accommodates that type of function. And we wanted to make sure there is a lot of concrete, there's a lot of asphalt and buildings on this site. We wanted to make sure there was green space as well. The other thought here is that it could be a dog walk area. There is no spot anywhere else on the site for that type of a feature. But again, we did envision this as being more of a, kind of community get together space if they wanted to have some kind of, dinner, lunch, picnic kind of idea.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Yes.
That area will compose of our underground stormwater detention as well.
Yes, thank you, Tim.
Okay.
There are some limitations on actually putting amenity features in that area. As Tim mentioned, there is underground detention or retention. And then there are also, we believe the city of Raleigh is going to require a 2-foot maintenance easement along Sawyer Road there, right along the frontage of that amenity area, and also a 5-foot utility easement. So we do have some limitations on what we can put in that amenity area. I did want to point out, I had this conversation with Tim yesterday about the street trees along Sawyer, this new extension going out to Bragg. We do have street trees along that entire amenity area. They are going to be white oak, they are going to be elm, and then we learned a new name yesterday, Chinese pistache, which I looked them up. They're beautiful in the fall. They have bright red-orange foliage, so they're going to be a very nice addition to that area. But there will be street trees along the amenity section of the community. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a little bit of a blow up of the area that we were talking about along Bragg Street. We have the situation where we are not meeting the primary street build to, and we are also not meeting that 30-foot building frontage requirement in proximity to the corner of Sawyer and Bragg. I wanted to focus for a moment on the reason that Building 1 has been oriented the way it has been. There's a very specific ADA reason for the buildings being oriented the way that they are. As I mentioned earlier, Bragg Street has that significant steep drop off, 30 feet as it's going down Bragg Street. The reason that we had to orient Building 1 perpendicular to Bragg instead of parallel to Bragg is if we made Building 1 parallel to Bragg, that would move those parking spaces between Building 4 and Building 1 also parallel to Bragg. The problem in doing that is ADA requirements. We are dealing with steep grade drops, and it would make a lot of the parking spaces on significant slopes, which would just not meet ADA requirements. So Tim played with this design over and over, trying to figure out a way to make it work. And in all honesty, this is the design that meets the ADA requirements. By moving Building 1 where we did, we also were able to create the amenity area altogether, and we created what we believe is a nice centrally located community park. By putting the amenity area where we had to put it, we do not meet that 30-foot building requirement in the UDO for the corner of Sawyer and Bragg. But again, we believe we have created this nice centrally located park. It functions very well as a community park in that particular area. If you could go to the next slide for me, please. Again, these are the same photos from the last presentation. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I just wanted to give you some typicals of what the amenity features are going to look like. You can go to the next slide, Charles. Thank you. There is, this is not part of the Bragg Street request, but I did want to point out down by Building 6, there is also a gazebo. I did not include a photo of that in this presentation just because it's not part of the Bragg Street request, but I did want to point that out that there also is a gazebo by in between Building 5 and 6. If you could go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just wanted to highlight for you, we do believe that we are meeting the intent of the Build 2 requirements for this site. We have added substantial amenities. We have created a new pedestrian connectivity all the way from, we're extending Sawyer to Bragg, and we have pedestrian connectivity throughout the site. The reason that we were not able to flip Building 1 to be parallel with Bragg Street again was because of the significant grade drop and to meet the heightened ADA requirements that we do have on this site. But with that being said, we would ask that a recommendation of approval be submitted to the planning director so that we can move forward with this project. Tim, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we take questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could touch base on, could you guys go Charles, a couple slides back showing the zoomed in portion? There you go. You know, the 30-foot corner placement of building 5, which you can barely see down there to the left. We were requested to tie in Sawyer Road as far away from the intersection of Bragg and Garner as possible. That was one request, and it kind of created a pinch point down there. The property to the south, which you can't really see, a city, and Jennifer, she touched based on it earlier, is City of Raleigh owned property with the Greenway Trail in that location. So yeah, that corner that was created by the extension of Sawyer Road or Sawyer Street and our property, yeah, just pinched us down to where we couldn't physically achieve or fit a building in that corner. But I think you touched base well on the placements of buildings 1 and 4. The steep slopes of Bragg Street, as she mentioned, it's 30 foot of grade. I mean, it's about 8 to 10% along that entire frontage, or frontage on Bragg Street, and to maintain ADA compliance in our parking lot, even throughout the whole site off of Bragg Street, off of Sawyer Street. When we, come off of Sawyer Street, we're restricted to maintain ADA compliance throughout the site. And yeah, there was just, there was a lot of attempts, but this was what kind of achieved the site being able to work in that aspect. So, but thank you.
We'll be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thanks for the presentation. Just so everybody's clear, I think the original first slide we looked at, just with the overall site plan, kind of showed north and south, and then it rotated. The one before this, I think, just what, Google Earth or something. Yeah. So just looking at that, the site has rotated 90 degrees on the other drawings, just so people are clear with that. So Bragg Street on this slide runs kind of north and south on the page, goes downhill as you go down the page there, which is a substantial drop. I'm looking at it right now on Google Earth. And so can you all tell me how the new street is in comparison with the existing location of the Greenway? Is it right at that point?
Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
So the Greenway, if you look on this slide, Corey, you can see it down there at the bottom, and it Y's right there on Bragg Street. So yeah, pretty much it interconnects. I think it's probably, I think it's about 650 feet from our corner of where Sawyer and Bragg connect. So yeah, they're in close proximity to one another, but where it Y's to the plan north, but really, west, it connects to the existing sidewalk on Bragg Street. So we're tying our sidewalk into Bragg at that location with just close proximity to the trail. And also right across to the plan east is the connection of the Greenway Trail on the other side of Bragg Street. So they line up honestly perfectly. Sawyer, the southern sidewalk on Sawyer with the cross connection of the trail on Bragg. That's right. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's a little plan north on the right hand side of the street there. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions from the commission for the applicant?
In the amenity area, you said there's a retaining wall with a railing above it. Is there any way to get from one level to the other without kind of going out and around?
You do have to take the sidewalk down. Just because of the drop off, there wasn't really a way to get people down to that lower level without using the sidewalk. But there is complete connectivity on the sidewalks to get you to that lower level.
Can you tell us what that sidewalk width is? Is that kind of a standard sidewalk, or does the city have any widen it a little bit?
on the in our property, there's standard 5 foot. And on Sawyer Street, I believe there's 6. I can double check. I think they're 6 foot wide on Sawyer. The two paralleling both sides of Sawyer would be 6, and site is 5.
And this is Candace. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, what's the height of the retaining wall again?
It varies. So if you're looking at this plan, I wish we could zoom in. Well, I can zoom in. Let me zoom in. I apologize. I can't. Across from the amenities where our drive comes in, the wall, it grades out, and as it goes towards Bragg Street, the first turn behind the play areas is approximately 4 feet, and then where it turns to be parallel with Sawyer Street, it varies in that area from 5 to 7 feet along that wall edge, all the way until you get to the corner of Building 1 and Bragg Street. That corner where it goes up Bragg Street is about 7 feet, I think, right there in that area. Again, that wall is due to the steep grades of Bragg. There was no way to really create a flatter spot. And I was trying to generate a area above the wall and below the wall, and also maintain that wall will have to be grid enforced. So we had to maintain a certain distance from Building 1 to construct that wall.
And will there be any crosswalks on Sawyer Street internally to the site?
Yes, there will be. Wherever we have a main intersection, there will be handicap accessibility ramps, and there will be crosswalks to get to the other side of the street. Yes, Candace.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us the slopes on either side of the amenity area, what you're calling amenity area, on the upper side of the wall and the lower side of the wall there? Is it actually pretty flat, something that they can play on, or is it trying to pick up a lot of grade quickly?
No, I designed it fairly flat. Let me pull up the plans. Well, I have the plans, trying to pull up the CAD file. I would say they're about a 5 to 10% grade in those areas. So not extremely flat. Get good drainage around the buildings in both of those areas. Kind of make up some grade and not have a 10-foot retaining wall there. So it's a juggling aspect, and getting decently flat grades and not extensively tall retaining walls.
So just to be clear, that amenity area directly adjacent to Sawyer Street that's lower down than Building 1 are you saying the grades are up to 10% there?
No, 5.
5, okay.
Yeah.
And that stormwater, you said there's underground stormwater in that area, right?
That's right, Adam, yeah.
Okay. Could you describe the extent of that underground stormwater in relation to the retaining wall and the streets?
Well, we have to maintain a 10-foot offset for underground stormwater structures off of retaining wall and off of that, like Jennifer mentioned, there's easements in that location on both sides of Sawyer Street. So yes, it compromises. It'll compose of 9 foot. I think the way we have it currently designed, 2 to 3 9-foot diameter underground detention pipes running the length of that distance of Sawyer in that area, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, as Jennifer had stated, the Sawyer Road's lined with street trees every 40 feet on center.
Mm-hmm. And is that the same on Bragg? Trying to imagine how the street trees, are they I guess it's
Yeah.
just the back of sidewalk.
That's correct. Sorry, guys.
Any other questions from the commission for the applicant? Okay, being none, I believe we do not have anybody from the general public to speak as well, so we can go ahead and close it and open it up for discussion within the commission. Again, I think, landscape would sure help kind of give us an idea of what's going on a little bit better. Maybe a section through showing some grades or showing this wall and kind of, some amenity area, if it's really accessible or not, and should it have some stairs going down to it or, access to it or not. There's some questions for me. The length of the building sure doesn't help. It gave the engineers something hard to deal with, and I think they've done a good job trying to deal with what was handed to them. But look forward to other comments from the commission members.
Yeah, it's a tricky site. I totally understand why they're doing a lot of what they're doing, but similar, sure, more detail is going to help us, approve these things, because I can try and imagine things, but it's pretty empty. There's grades, Jennifer talked about using that amenity area for events, and with what I see, maybe it could be, but I don't know. More detail would make it easier for us to get behind it.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Just especially with having like a 7-foot high wall on the lower amenity area, it's a little bit hard to imagine how that won't kind of just become a dead space without a little more detail.
And, I just think it's really important not to have dead spaces right next to these greenways in denser areas. I think this is a really important area to think about in general.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind too that we are limited to what we can place there because of the detention. But I do understand your statements for sure. I just wanted you guys to keep that in mind as well.
Any other thoughts, commission? It's a hard one again for me. It sure would be nice to see some interconnectivity. I can understand why they don't. I wonder, if something greater than a 4-foot sidewalk up from their parking lot between these buildings or something down to the greenway would be better. I wonder about access to these amenity areas, how they're going to be used, and it's a tough one for me to justify, if we're looking back through our findings to justify it. I'm having a hard time doing that without a little bit more information. Looks like we're about 50% of what we're required as far as our build twos.
Corey, this is Corey. I'm not sure how that changes.
I think if, in my opinion, if they're not meeting the requirements, then you've got to do something else to better the site to make it more appealing, because it's not meeting the intent of the code. And so I think that's why they're here, is because they're not meeting the intent of the code. And to better that, I don't know. I mean, like I said, maybe some connection, maybe to these amenity areas, maybe some planting up against a wall. You have a 10-foot buffer between the stormwater device and the wall, and can it be planted? I don't know. I'm not a landscape architect, but are there things which we just don't see landscaping wise? I think would help that, and maybe some more information on what that amenity area might be.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, I think, I agree with you, Corey. I mean, they've done the best they can with a super long, I don't even know what the length of these buildings, 245 feet. I mean, they're long buildings. I think they, looking at the architecture perspective, I'd probably be looking at ways to break these buildings down into half, but they get more expensive that way as well. So to where you can mess with the grades more and do things and change things up a little bit, but they were dealt a hard road to hoe here, and so I feel for them. But at the same regard, I think a little more information on the landscape and how these amenity areas are served would go a long ways. But I'm open to questions.
Well, it sounds like we got similar requests for more clarity, more information as on this project as we did on the last, and I wonder if it's easy enough for them to do both of them, kind of address what our concerns are with both of these and bring them back at the same time, and we can, look at them again and hopefully get some more detail and understand how they are kind of offsetting what they can't do, because it's a tough site, with what they can do by making improved amenity areas. And that's how we can get behind the intent of the code, what they're doing, and how it matches with the intent of the code. So I'd make a motion to defer along with the other project with the same kind of comments.
Let me ask the applicant, I assume we're in the same condition with this one as we are with the other one as far as timing and in the process, where it is in the process?
Yeah, that's correct, Corey. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I understand, and, I don't want to be the one holding things up for sure, but I think a little bit more information. And I think, Tim, Jennifer, I think, you have understanding what we're kind of asking for on this one as well.
I do. I would. What my understanding would be is maybe some beefier landscaping, as well as showing you guys what we're proposing in this area for landscaping in general. And I apologize, I didn't know. Well, this is we should have. It would have been nice to have some landscaping shown on these, but we can absolutely provide whatever type of landscaping you guys would like to see on these. In both of these areas for Summit and Two-Line site. But yes, I do. I think I got your course.
This is Corey Mason. I think, overall, I think what we're really asking for is you guys have done a great job on both these projects, showing us how difficult they are and what you've done to sort of work around that. And I think that's kind of halfway of where you need to go to get this approved, and the other half is just kind of showing because we couldn't meet the code, this is what we're doing instead of that. And I think that's what's missing. And we're throwing out landscape as one option. There could be a number of options that you guys come back with that sort of share how this is going to be better.
Gotcha.
Because of those conditions.
Okay.
Thank you, Corey. I appreciate that. That's well said.
Yeah, well said. Good. Yeah, and grades, I'd love to see the proposed grades in those areas. Just wrap my head around what it's going to feel like.
Yeah, we can provide you with that information, Adam. Absolutely.
Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and second that Adam's motion. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, by raising your hand. You can turn on your camera or let us know.
This is Will. I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. All right, any opposed? All right, that passes. Let's we'll see that. Same thing. If you can work with staff to come up with a time, you know, if I feel like they're both pretty well straightforward. I think we've given some good feedback. Shouldn't take long. If we can fit them in our next meeting, we'll if we can, we'll do it.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to look at AAD case number 3. So we have AAD 25-20, 121 Fayetteville Street. This is the one that we just saw at our last meeting. So I believe mostly everybody was here, so we should have a pretty good understanding. But we'll go ahead and let staff kind of go through it really quickly. I believe, Lee, are you presenting this one?
That's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, this is for 121 Fayetteville Street that did just come in for a courtesy review, and they're here today to seek 4 alternates for pedestrian access, transparency, blank wall, and building massing. So I'm going to be reading the intent for each of these, as well as the staff report, and then I'm going to turn it over to the applicant to give more detail. So for pedestrian access, the intent is that the street-facing entrance regulations are intended to concentrate pedestrian activity along the street edge and provide an easily identifiable and conveniently located entrance for residents, visitors, and patrons accessing a building as pedestrians from the street. And 2, that access points should be located or identified in a manner visible to the pedestrian from the street and be accessible via a direct path. So in this case, the applicant is proposing to redevelop a 1.25 acre site located at 121 Fayetteville Street and zone downtown mixed use, 40 stories, shopfront frontage. The site currently contains a parking garage with retail spaces on the ground floors along both Fayetteville Street and South Wilmington Street. The applicant is proposing to build a 32-story mixed-use building on the southern portion of the site. And I know it says here that they're going to retain a portion of the parking garage, but they are actually going to tear down the existing parking garage and rebuild their own. So the applicant is proposing entrances along Fayetteville at intervals of 50 feet or less, except where the elevator bank sits. There will be a distance of 73 feet between the doorways. And I will also state that for downtown shop frontages, we require 50% spacing between entrances. The applicant is proposing 2 pedestrian entrances on the Wilmington Street facade with 64 feet and 98 feet stretches with no entrances between those. The entrances that are provided make use of architectural features to define the entrances and make them more visible along the street. And also I should state, if you have questions at any point, please feel free to interrupt me as I'm going through all this. The intent for transparency is that transparency requirements are intended to lend visual interest to street-facing building facades for both pedestrians and building occupants and minimize blank wall areas. This is not applicable to residential uses. The applicant, sorry, I forgot I'm running the slideshow as well. Along South Wilmington Street, the applicant is proposing 25.43% transparency with 25.43% falling between 3 feet and 8 feet. The small amount of transparency along Wilmington Street is primarily due to the placement of a parking deck entrance, loading dock, and other back of house functions along Wilmington Street, in the redevelopment portion of the property to maintain the Fayetteville Street side as the primary urban corridor. Wilmington Street will have glazing for retail and restaurant space and for the stairwell entrance. The blank wall area regulations are intended to prevent large, monotonous expanses of unidentified building mass. The level of architectural detail should be most intense at the street level, where it is within the view of the pedestrians on the sidewalk. The east elevation of the building contains 37% blank wall area comprised of articulated metal screening, and the west elevation has a blank wall area of 24%, which is also articulated metal screening. The applicant is proposing to use folded architectural metal panels, aluminum trim, color variation, and a large art installation to offset the blank wall areas. The level of architectural articulation and detail is concentrated at the street level to emphasize visual interest for pedestrians. Now for building massing. The intent of the building massing regulations is to manage the impact of tall buildings located near the public right-of-way. Setbacks are intended to provide access to light and air at street level, mitigate wind impacts, produce a consistent street wall, and visually reduce the perceived scale of a building to avoid a canyon effect. In the attached information, oh no, I'm sorry, I do need to read the top part. The applicant is proposing to develop a 32-story mixed-use building. As proposed, the building does not meet the massing standards that require a 15-foot minimum step back between the 3rd and 7th floor on both the Fayetteville Street and South Wilmington Street facades, which will both have 0-foot step backs. The applicant is considering I'm sorry, that's old language, forgive me. In the attached information, the applicant describes a 100-foot step back to the north towards the historic state capitol building. The applicant also mentions that there are material changes between the ground level, parking levels, and office levels to mimic wall plane change and delineate the facade. The applicant has provided plans, elevation, and renderings to illustrate the proposed design. All right, is everyone still with me? Are there any questions before I turn it over?
Any questions for staff?
All right, then I'll turn it over to Jason Frost and Matthew Petter to give the presentation. Moderator, if you wouldn't mind unmuting them.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. This is Matt Petter with Dudepain Architects. I'm the project architect. And I spoke with all of you, I guess it was about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and went through this presentation. Jason Frost, the developer, is on the phone as well. And so is Dave Toms, landscape architect. Happy to go through the presentation again if you all would like. Also happy to just focus on those items that we spoke about last time. There were 2 items that were brought up last time that I think you all asked for more information on. The first was to provide an image of the metal panel screening that we were going to use in the parking garage, which we have in the slideshow at the end. The second was to show the street trees existing and what will be final around the site on Fayetteville and on Wilmington Street. So Dave with McAdams has provided a site plan where we can see that. I've also updated a colorized, more illustrative ground floor plan so you all can see it. So I'm just gonna, before I just dive into this and repeat what I presented last week, do you have a preference? I just want to be considerate of everyone's time. I'm happy to go through it again. I'm also happy to focus on the items that you asked us to take a look at.
I believe we had a pretty good showing at last meeting. I think that I'm trying to see if there's anybody that wasn't here, but I think hitting the highlights and then we can ask questions, I think would be fine.
Okay. Well,
it's still pretty fresh in our memory.
Good. Well, the big highlights just for the step backs, as Lee did a great job of summarizing all of them. We pushed the building to the south to move it away from the Capitol building. And it also has this good solar orientation east-west. So the short faces of the building are on Fayetteville and Wilmington Street. That's just kind of a brief summary. And then you all know on the ground plane some of the work that we massaged. Lee, if you could go to slide 18, that would be the best way just for me to also provide an update on the trees. I think it was slide 18. Oh, it's
You're
not
gonna have
ours.
I was gonna say, you're gonna have to guide me a little bit, so why don't you just tell me as I move through
Sure.
when we
Yeah,
get
if you just
there.
want to, yeah, if you just want to click through, this was the datum slide. There's a sketch that Tehran provided. Yeah, you can keep clicking through here, and we'll get to a ground floor plan that's colored, and I'll let you know. Yeah, and anyone, if anyone wants to stop on something, please just let us know. Happy to do it. But I wanted to just show the street trees on the colorized illustrative plan. For I believe it was Adam who made the comment, and there you go, right there. This is my kind of illustrative plan showing the street trees. And Adam, what you see on Fayetteville Street is existing, and those are to remain. Our utilities and our sidewalk curb cuts, as we talked about last time, are all on Wilmington Street. And there's a lot of stuff going on over there. So that sidewalk is going to be redone, and those trees on Wilmington Street will be new. And I know I talked with Dave about those. So I know there's some specific city requirements for the soil, and the planters, et cetera. So what you see there will be new trees on Wilmington Street. And Lee, if you keep clicking through, and go to, I believe it'll be the last slide of ours in here. It's the more, I would say, detailed site plan that's with the ASR submission, because there's also some trees that will be added yeah, there you go, perfect. It's hard to see here, but if you were to zoom in, you could see there's trees that are going to be added to the pedestrian passageway too. That's another one of those really important elements of this project, because the existing passageway is kind of underutilized and I would say underdesigned. And so Mick Adams and the team was tasked with coming up with a new design for it. So there's a few really small trees that'll be planted in there, along with some softscape and then all new hardscape in between. So I hope that answers your question on the trees. And then if you go back one slide, you can see the perforated metal panel. Now I'm just going to make a caveat here that this is another project, so ours will be a different design. But for those of you who are familiar with, these perforated metal panels, this is a panel done by Morin, and you can see what's really great about this panel is they have two profiles that we like to use in some instances to create more grain and texture. So in part of the building, we use the profile that you'll see on the bottom, which is a 12-inch wide panel with a single fold that has a wider texture. And then in other places where we try and reinforce other elements in the building, we use the smaller panel that has two folds in the same 12-inch panel. So it gives it a finer texture. It's a way to, so you can change color on the panels, but you can also change number of folds to create a finer grain. And those things allow us to create these variations in the envelope that help reinforce some of the elements on the exterior. And then the other thing that we always like to do is when the building sits above the parking deck and we have the glazing, and you can kind of see it right here at the top of the screen, where we have mullions and articulation on the project, we carry those lines down over the garage skin so that it feels like a unified element. It feels like a cohesive design. As I said, this is a different project that's under construction right now, but we're using the same panels on this project and the same perforation pattern, which is a 40% perforated round staggered pattern to allow for an open parking garage per the code. I'm happy to answer questions or focus on any of the other topics if you all have any questions or want to see any other images again. Please let me know if you have any questions. And Dave, please jump in if you had anything else to add on the Wilmington Street trees.
No, I think you covered it. They'll be performing a lot better than what's currently out there right now. They'll have the new soil system, so it will be an improvement.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions from the commission for the applicant?
Potentially. Lee, could you go forward one slide, the 66 to that new site plan? And I think it's 66. Could you zoom in on that area? Because I don't think we've got that in the material I saw.
Do you need me to go in any closer? Is that a good view?
Maybe just a little bit more if you could. Thank you.
And Dave, can you talk about the species of tree as well? I know that I think it's on the top right corner of this image.
Yeah, Wilmington is trident maples. The Fayetteville Street will be the oaks to remain. And then currently in the gallery, we've got dogwoods, but that could potentially change as we move through CDs within that space. But it will be a small upright, just given the conditions down there, the canyon-like conditions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. I've got another question on the first floor site plan that showed the street trees, unless anybody's got any other questions on this sheet.
No, I was just going to say thanks for showing those. I think the maples are playing off of what's already there. Isn't that right, Dave?
Correct. They just won't be the sad wisps that are out there right now.
Yeah, the ones that are.
Yeah, they I will say they are grouped tightly, but we were able to get the full code minimum in there and incorporate the driveways.
Yeah. While we're looking at this, why is the gap between the trees on Fayetteville? Is that existing gap? Do you know what that's about?
That's the current entrance to the deck. So there's the wide painted pedestrian crossing that goes over to the Fargo Plaza.
So how are you all going to deal with that? You don't want to put trees there once you get rid of the entrance?
No, we're not disturbing anything outside the property limits. So all that's the city's right away and part of the larger pedestrian crossing.
Mm-hmm. And I'll also note that pedestrian crossing will still be used. A lot of this parking on the north side is serving that building across the street. So that's something we were taking into consideration as well, making sure that those users have a clear pathway to that project.
So Matt, my question on this slide was for that parking entrance for the south tower, the one right in the middle. And I know you said last time you had met with the transportation group to work on these a lot. I'm just curious if you guys talked about shifting that slightly to the north. So, if you think about where the pedestrian and vehicle, most of the conflict occurs, it's with the cars coming out of the garage because they don't have enough time to see people walking along the sidewalk to stop in time. And I'm just thinking if you shifted that whole thing a little bit to the north, and it looks like you've got space to do that, it just gives the cars coming out of that parking deck a little more opportunity to see people coming down the sidewalk.
Yeah, we had talked about that, and we talked about it a little bit last time, Chris, too. I think it's a good point. What we did was originally, to help alleviate that specific problem, we had the opening in the building kind of pulled up closer to the edge of the hatched area on either respective side. So we had pulled, while we were talking with transportation and right before we went to Board of Adjustment, we pulled that opening to make it a little bit wider so that like that car coming out on the bottommost lane would have a little bit more line of sight, but also the person on the sidewalk would have a little bit more line of sight. There was a lot of conversation back and forth about the distance between overall in the block between those curb cuts center line to center line. So that was what was really driving it and led to our position for our submission for the Board of Adjustment. I will say though, I think to your point, I think it's it's important that we make sure that we do continue to keep that wider. I think that right now, the way it's boxed out around the column on the south side of that opening, it's as tight as it can get to where that column will be. So we did look at it. We tried to widen it as much as we could. And you can see to the one to the north as well is kind of the same thing. The southernmost lane exiting has this kind of, it's a little re-entrant corner in there that gives a greater cone of vision or line of sight to the pedestrian walking north on Wilmington Street.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And appreciate all the extra information that we asked for. Looks good.
I'm happy to do it.
This is Chad. I'll echo a couple comments from last time. I think given the complexities that the project has been dealt and the fact that we've got block to block, on east and west, and we're bound by buildings north to south, I think they've done a great job of playing the cards they were dealt. Certainly, how we handle some of the back of house stuff is just part of the project and part of the typologies, but I'm in full support of the project. I think you did a great job, and I would make a motion to move to approve unless anyone has any other issues.
Any other questions for the applicant?
This is Will. I just want to say, thank you to the applicant for hearing our concerns last time, and before that, making those changes and just being so open with us. Looking forward to this project. I think it's going to be iconic downtown. So thank you.
Thanks. I echo both those. Well said, both Chad and Will. Appreciate that. I think any other. There's no other questions. I don't think I had asked for general public, but I believe there are none.
That's correct.
And I've not closed this internally yet. So let's go ahead and close this. We can talk amongst ourselves. We have 4 different items we need to look at. If there's any further general comment, we can do that. If not, I'm happy to go through them one by one. Maybe we can get through these. Any general comments? Okay, being none, let's go ahead and look at transparency really quick. Bear with me as I'm getting through to my.
Corey, I've got the findings for transparency up on the screen.
Thank you. So these are the findings we need to look at. The approved alternate is the intent of the transparency requirements. The approved alternate conforms to the comprehensive plan, adopted city plans, and the street-facing building facade utilizes other architectural treatments to create visual interest and offset the reduction in transparency. I think 1 and 3 we've gone through, and I feel pretty confident that we meet the intent. The approved alternate conforms to the comprehensive plan. If we can look at our policies and throw out a few.
Policy UD 1.4, maintaining facade lines.
Say UD 2.3. I think activating the street even. I think it does that.
UD 4.5, improving the street environment.
Okay, any others? If not, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve this. This is Chris.
Okay, Chris.
I'll second that motion.
Well, I'll second.
Okay, so we have a second from Adam.
Thank you.
All in favor? Please turn on your cameras or let us know.
This is Will. I'm in favor.
Thank you. All right, any opposed? All right, looks like unanimous. Okay, so we're good with transparency. How about the pedestrian access? Can we go to that? Okay, so the findings, the approved alternate meets the intent of the street-facing entrance regulations. I believe it does. Approved alternate conforms with comprehensive plan. We'll come back to that. The pedestrian access point is easily identifiable by pedestrian, customer, and visitors. I believe it is. We've substantiated that. The recessed or projecting entries or building elements have been incorporated into the design of the building to enhance visibility of the street-facing entrance. I believe it does. Pedestrian route from the street and bus stops and other modes of public transportation to the entrance is safe, convenient, and direct. And I believe well. So if we can look at the findings. UD 1.3.
LU 5.1.
UD 4.5.
Okay. All right, that's good. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve this one too.
I'll second it. Chad?
Second from Chad. Motion from Chris. All right, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? None being, that passes unanimous. All right, let's move on to blank wall. Blank wall findings. The approved alternate meets the intent of the blank wall area regulations. The increase in blank wall area is offset by additional architectural treatments and increased vertical landscaping, which we've talked about both. I believe it does. The amount of blank wall area for the building located on the urban frontage should not be 40%. Any questions with any of those? Being none, let's, the approved alternate conforms with the comprehensive plan, adopt the city plans. Can we look at those findings?
UD 1.2.
That's a UD 1.3.
Any others? Okay, I think that's fine. I think, any other comments? None being, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve by Chad.
I'll second that. Chris?
Motion from Chad, second from Chris. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, pass. And the final one is the building massing. Again, I think we talked about this last time. You know, I think we've seen this before. There's a text change that they're looking at on the table. I think, it's a beautiful building and they did a great, fantastic job. So let me see if I can get to these findings. Somehow I messed up my computer. All right, the approved alternate meets the intent of the building massing regulations. The approved alternate uses a change in building materials, mimic a change in wall plane. The most substantial and durable material are located at the bottom floors. We've discuss that. The approved alternate proposed a building setback behind the sidewalk in lieu of required setback, resulting open space. Includes public amenities such as seating areas, trees, landscape, outdoor activities. And the building contains architectural treatments for delineating the base, middle, and top of the building, which I believe it does. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, the approved alternate conforms with the comprehensive plan, adopt the city plans. And substantiate that.
LE 5.1.
.4 scale design. UD 1.2. UD 1.3.
DT 7.5.
All right, that's 5. Did you get all those, Lee?
I'm going to read them back to you just in case. I got LU 5.1. I think what 7.4. I didn't catch what that one was.
LU 7.4.
Thank you. LU 7.4, UD 1.2, UD 1.3, and DT 7.5.
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Any other further conversation? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve by Chad.
Second.
Second from Adam. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimous. Fantastic. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Great project.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along, we have a courtesy review for 200 West Hargett Street. We have a staff presentation from Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So this, for East Civic Tower, they are proposing to request 2 different alternates, one for Build 2 and one for building massing. So I'm going to go through the Build 2 request first. So the applicant is proposing to develop a 20-story building on a 0.922 acre site zoned downtown mixed use, 20 stories, shop front frontage that will house city council chambers and City of Raleigh staff offices and facilities. For shop front frontages, the primary street is required to meet an 80% build to within 0 feet and 15 feet at the property line. As proposed, the building occupies, it says 72, but it should say 74% of the primary street build to, and all of the side street build to. The entirety of the build to range will be filled with a ground floor amenity area that will connect to 2 additional terraced amenity areas accessible to the public. The site design will also create visual and pedestrian connection to Nash Square. The amenity area at sidewalk level will consist of a sunshade element, a monumental stair connecting to the main entrance and to the terraced amenity areas, a large bench seating area, planters with GSI systems, a greater number of street trees than required by the streetscape standards, and patterned pavers. And so now for building massing. So in lieu of the required 15-foot step backs on both Hargett Street and McDowell Street facades, the applicant is proposing an increased setback of 15 feet for the building to extend the sidewalk area and provide greater amenity space to the public realm. Awning elements at the first and second floor create facade articulation that will help to reduce the perceived scale of the building, and the terraces on the western facade create a 70-foot step back at the 3rd floor. So now I'm going to turn it over to the Civic Campus team to talk more about the project. So Aaron, if you could unmute Andreas, I believe, and Daniel, they will be our main presenters.
We can also unmute the Rachel team, Leslie, and Ben. That would be great.
Sure. So we do not have, let's see, you said Leslie, Ben,
Hi, it looks like I'm unmuted. This is Leslie.
And we don't have Andreas on the call anymore.
He had some IT issues, but I think we can go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, can you all hear me? Yes, okay. I'm Leslie Bartleby. I'm a landscape architect at Ratio. I don't know if I need to say, et cetera. That's none. I will briefly introduce the project and the team. The East Civic Tower is the first phase of the Civic Campus Master Plan that was adopted by Council in 2018. Ratio is partnering with Penning Larson for the design of the tower, which is going to house the City Council chamber and consolidate staff from 6 separate downtown locations for collaboration and efficiency and provide a state-of-the-art public service area. It's part of a true blend of interior and exterior public realm to provide front porch for the city hall. We are currently at the very early stages of schematic design, so we are pursuing this courtesy review to provide an initial view for the commission into the project and our emphasis on enhancing the vibrancy of the public realm, the goal of which is driving our pursuit of our contemplated administrative ultimate. Our team here today includes myself and Ben Horn from Ratio, Daniel Coleman, and maybe Andreas from Larson. So Daniel with Larson will talk to you briefly through the project and give you their pursuit to enhance the public realm.
Great. Thank you so much, Leslie. So I'm excited to get to take you through the project. Just flip to the next slide. So we're going to go through 2 things. I have like a project introduction, just introducing to our design thinking, and then zooming in on the key zoning items that we want to discuss with you guys. Next. So let's start with a project introduction. So really the overarching ambition here is for us to create a civic icon, a place for people, and really create a face for public service. Next. So our location here is right on the intersection of Hargett and McDowell, opposite of Nash Square. Next. And our ambition here is to try to create a beacon in the city to be part of the urban landscape. And we really want to lift the tower up seemingly from the lower floors and then opening up the lower public-oriented floors that have public function to the city. So this is the overall idea, a sort of a solid tower that sits on a very transparent and light base. Next. Our inspiration comes from Raleigh. We really love this idea of the southern porch as this inviting and gestural element that creates this sort of invitation and puts life on display, and also has an aspect of comfort to it, of microclimate. And then the street life that we sort of observed in Raleigh, these layered facade, the textures of the trees, and putting the interior on display. Next. So on the ground level, and this is from concept design, so this we're working towards updating, we're proposing a large interior lobby connected to an outside amenity area, and then an interior public service area that will consolidate a number of the public functions in one connected area for a one-stop shop. Next. The second floor is also public and publicly accessible. Here we'll have the council chamber, access to a public terrace overlooking Nash Square, and then an art gallery that will be available to visitors. Here also visitors can come and see one of the public, the council at work and democracy at work. Next. So this is a preliminary view of the building. I should say that we're currently working on developing the facade, but this is the overall expression of the building as we're anticipating, and also the overall anticipation of the massing as it stands now. And what you can see here is this really transparent base of 3 stories that are publicly oriented, and also the canopies that we're trying to develop really create these shaded areas that at grade are publicly are the amenity areas, and at public on the upper levels are the publicly accessible terraces related to the interior program. Next. So the key building metrics, what you can see here is the overall tower massing. We have 3 public floors that have terraces to the southwest, and they are sort of fanning back to provide terraces at every level that are related to the interior program. And then we have an efficient administrative building on top of that, taking us up to 20 floors, around 300 feet. Next. So for the ground floor, our thinking is really to think of this as sort of a civic porch and connecting it and linking it to the park. So we're working really actively to be very considerate about our ground level landscape design, but also really start incorporating larger elements that will activate the ground plane and really knit the two, the inside and the outside, together. Next. So what you can see here in this view is sort of how we're starting to think about the public realm and sort of how that landscape from the park is sort of fanning up at grade and sort of introducing itself at every level of the building, trying to create a linkage between Nash Square and then also the building on the other side. And there will be a phase two, which will be the phase two of the master plan on the west side of the site, which we're trying to create sort of a linkage to already here. So even though this is the first phase, we're trying to create something that will sort of start playing with the second phase in the future. Next. So on the site plan at grade, what we're anticipating is a planted area, a series of street trees, along Hargett and McDowell that will create shade and then create a furnishing zone in between that. And then we're working with this large element of the civic porch. The entrance is from the corner of Hargett and McDowell's, and then we're creating this large element of the civic porch, this covered area. This is where we anticipate that we can arrange public lectures. This is where we can have introductions, and sort of smaller functions can start here before going into the actual building itself. Next. So we're anticipating some pervious and impervious areas here. This is just a preliminary take. We're designing this as we speak, so we'll try to figure out how to incorporate this in a way that sort of works with the overall planning strategy. Next. So our boundaries in pink are shown here as the property line, and then we have a 16-foot streetscape requirement from the edge of curb on both Hargett and McDowell. And then we're allocating a 10-foot amenity area along on the south and east part of the site, and then folding back on the southwestern portion of the site to create this increased amenity area and this large feature stair, working sort of these seating arrangement and incorporated plantings. Next. So we're incorporating some safety features, and we're looking to do those as part of the design in order to really make those part of the overall expression. So just secure, but also playful. Next. So for the terraces design, we're taking a little bit of inspiration, and maybe also saw that in the ground plan from quilt patterns and trying to create this overall feeling that sort of sets off a geometry pattern that we could sort of incorporate for planters, for medium-high vegetation, and also for the overall occupiable areas. It's just a little cute thought that we're trying to develop. Next. Oh, really? So then for the key zoning items, we're going to start with the massing, the massingness. Next. So this is the, first of all, the amenity area that we're proposing is we're trying to fulfill, but actually extending the requirements for the amenity area. So this is the amenity area at grade, but we're also providing a terrace areas on level 2 and 3, which are publicly accessible right through the building. So this is the section from the UDO, which is 3.3.3 as far as I know. So we really wanted to work to maximize that area at grade. So we go to the next. That really creates an interior and exterior connection. So what you can see here is on the right-hand side, we have that blue, and blue is the public area. That's the entrance to the actual civic tower. From there, you can walk into the PSA, which is the public service area, and that is linked to the outside with this big civic stair. And you can see here on the left, we're anticipating a cover, which is this canopy that will extend over and create shade from the southern side. Next. So here, because we're providing this amenity area at grade, we're creating this 15-foot zone, which is actually, the design is anticipating we're providing a setback in lieu of a step back above the third floor. So really, because of this, we're planning to seek an administrative alternate that would sort of, instead of having the 15-foot setback after the third floor, we would do it at grade. And that allows us to both provide the 15-foot, the amenity area, extending that on the south and eastern part of the site, but also have terraces on the west part of the site that can sort of cascade up and get that effect of linking back to Nash Square that we really like. But that is sort of a little bit dependent on pushing the tower out as far as possible to the south and to the east. Next. So this is a preliminary view, still a little bit rough, but this is where we are at the moment. We're working with a very open and transparent facade here at grade, and we also understand that, you know, the intent of the advice of creating this 15-foot setback about the third floor is to create a distinction also between the tower and the podium. That's also part of our concept, and we're trying to create that same effect with having two differentiated facade systems. So here at grade, what we're working with is this idea of this arched light facade that distinguishes itself from the top, which is a more solid regular facade that has more of a civic feel to it, and then also plays a little bit with this effect of the street trees that we're trying to create here. You can see here there's some things that we're working on with grading on the steps. That is also to be worked out, but what we're really anticipating, this is be a very green and lush area, both under the canopies and under the street trees. And then we're really creating this sort of transparent base and a more solid tower on top. Next. And this is a view from Nash Square. You can sort of see here again how we have this sort of heavy base, this sort of really strong building standing in the corner, marking itself quite prominently onto the skyline. And then we're trying to create a very light base that again creates that differentiation between the base and the tower that we understand to be the intent of the UDO requirements. Next. The next issue is the build to. So again, because we're providing this amenity area, and we really want to create this large staircase and this these feature stairs on the southwestern portion of the site, we're creating an area here that's non-compliant. And this is basically will be given over to public amenities. So we're trying our best to sort of keep all the interior program out to the build to zone, but really most of this area will be will be programmed from the inside as very active use. And then we're creating a larger area on the terraces here, and sort of to maximize, on the amenity area that really maximizes, again, an exterior public oriented program. Go to the next.
That's the last slide.
So thanks, Lee. Well, I mean, I think this basically concludes the overall, like really what our ambition here is to create this very civic and open ground floor. And our focus has been to get a really active ground plane in, create an invitation for residents to come in and participate and be part. And we're really hoping that this enlarged amenity area can then also, outside of opening hours, create an attraction and be a welcoming gesture towards the city. We're really excited to hear your thoughts and comments.
Thank you, Leslie and Daniel. Appreciate that presentation. I think it'll be a great building. Any feedback from commission? Questions, comments for that?
Hello.
This is Will. I got a.
Oh. This is Megan Beach.
This is Will.
Let's go ahead, Megan, and then Will can go next. Go ahead,
Okay.
Megan.
I'll be quick. This is Megan Beach. I need to recuse myself. That's it.
Thank you. Will.
I got a question that may lead to a comment. Is there a reason that there isn't any cafe or kind of retail space considered as part of this?
Actually, we are considering a cafe, sort of a grab and go situation, and lower on the in the lobby on the ground floor currently. So that is sort of the active program, but we're also trying to accommodate quite a lot of uses on that lower floor. And I think for the civic building, the most sort of retail-like function that we have to work with is actually the public service area, which I think is close to being a retail function. So we're trying to fill out that with.
Okay. Yeah, my comment related to that is just, I think in this context, the building would be very served by having, a prominent cafe component to it, more so than in terms of the activation of the space and in terms of the public realm and then kind of the storefront level activity. The designs are beautiful in terms of the amenity area, but the existing city hall has a plaza area that isn't that utilized. So I just think this is a real opportunity when that is right now an existing kind of dead spot in traversing downtown.
Lee, would you mind going back one slide so we have the rendering up while we're talking about it? Thank you. And we may need to go back to a couple of the other renderings. I think it's a really, this one's great. This is a good one to pause on for a minute. I think this is a really interesting building, really interesting first glance at how y'all are thinking through this. I'm interested a little bit in the circulation patterns, especially in this view that we're looking at now, exactly where the entrances are for the public, and how you kind of see people flowing through the space. I think that there was an early slide about that, but I'd just love to hear a little bit more from you about the connection to the sidewalk, to Nash Square, to, especially for this part of the building that's facing us in this diagram, those three kind of public terraces, how you're thinking about the pedestrian and the public experience there. Thank you.
And Jake, let me add to that because I think this is an important comment. I think one thing that we talk about is how we're transparent to the public, but we've got these kind of thin expressions. First three stories are great. These thin expressions, but for all the pedestrians that are walking oblique to that, what they see is non-transparency. And so I'm trying to kind of reconcile between understanding the architectural concept and then what is the actual experience of the public kind of addressing that. So just touch on that, please.
Sure. Maybe I start there, and then we can go into the slide backly into the the axles that we had in the beginning. But if we're going to start there, I think a few things that we started when we started out in this project was really asking ourselves what the expression of a contemporary civic building is. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was sort of distinguish ourselves from a commercial building. One of the things that we sort of identified as a key objective was this idea of solidity without seeming to be, let's say, flimsy or too transparent or part of a mall or something like that, right? So one of the things that we're really trying to achieve here is to create something which has, looks a little different than your typical, let's say, glass curtain wall. And we really like this idea that there is some depth to that lower floor facade. So we had in the beginning, we had sort of a thinner facade, especially, see those elements, the horizontal elements that are sort of separating the floors. Those were a lot less deep in the beginning. And one of the things that we saw is that first of all, the shade that's created and the play of light, we really like that idea that, as the light moves over this throughout the day, you'll have this sort of intersection of light and shadow on the facade. But then second of all, trying to achieve this differentiation between, the lower floors and the podium, we really thought that was a great way of distinguishing itself. So we're aware of the opacity, but those fins get quite thin as they sort of reach the ground level. And it's actually all the way down to almost 9 inches when they go down, when they are at grade. So this is sort of the thinnest part of them. So just a little bit of our consideration. I appreciate the comment. And then
one item to consider is totally understand it goes down 9 inches. That's a curtain wall profile, no big deal. But if I'm on the second floor of this looking out and I'm facing a park and I'm oblique to that, I'm not going to see that full perspective of the park. So just be sure we're thinking about what the interior experience is, as well as the kind of exterior prominence that it holds. I get the whole civic, that the idea of we hold mass, it is sturdy, it is longevity. But I don't want that to come at the cost of a great experience, both for the people, the true owners, the city of Raleigh, and those people that work in it day to day. And then on the I'll say the upper, the upper 17 floors, trying to find the balance between that civic kind of nature, but also progressive, we are thinking ahead, Raleigh is on the learning curve of where we're going to go. We're living, we're a balance of what's in the rearview mirror and where we came from, but also forward thinking. So be sure that we kind of represent our brand in the building.
Certainly, I hear that. I think one of the things that we are aware of, and this is we're still developing this, right? But there's we don't want to become too strict. So like breaking with us, the appearance of this 5-foot grid that's just extruded up through the building, identifying a little bit more playfulness into that is one of the things that we have actually also discussed. So we'll be happy to carry the progress if that makes sense.
And I'm very sensitive to the fact, like we do not want this to appear like another speculative office building. It can't be that, right? It's got to be something that when you drive into town, you understand that it holds a certain civic attitude, nature, and prominence. And so I think we're all sensitive to that. I do think that from a setback standpoint and, that corner being so prominent, especially against a soft edge of a park, like how do we soften the building? Because there's a certain rigor about it that I think civic architecture has, but it can't come at the cost of feeling kind of austere. So I think there's going to be, you develop it, and you guys, I'm sure, going through this, there is that balance between the rigor and also the playfulness. I do think the playfulness is important in kind of establishing that leading edge we keep talking about. But just be sure that, again, budget's a huge concern. I get that. But, what is that kit of parts that make up that playfulness?
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Lee, are you okay to flip us back to the overall axles? I'll just explain a little bit about the considerations. So it's if you go back further, just in almost in the beginning.
And the public zones are great. I mean, the ground floor, the way the front porch, all those concepts, I think, are dead on.
Great. I'm excited that they resonate with you, Chad. I think we're really trying very hard to make this contextual and feel like it's coming out. Oh, Lee, if you go forward to the axis, this one. Yes.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think I swept past it.
No, that's perfect. So also, Leslie, feel free to jump in if there's anything you want to know. I don't want to be hijacking the microphone since I can't see you. But
you're fine.
I just wanted to walk through the flows a little bit here. So I appreciate the comment of the ground floor and the openness in the cafe. One of the challenges that we're dealing a little bit here are the security requirements. So as you can see here in the yellow and the green, this is basically the two main flows that we have for the on the corner entrance. And then you're going to go through a security screening. So we have some queuing area. And once you're inside of the lobby, you're basically considered as being in the secure area. And a part of the requirements is to have just a singular point of entrance. So once you're in there, that is also where you're going to go back out. So there's control of the entrance and exits. We were for a long time debating creating a secondary entrance or an entrance from that main stair area that we're creating on the west side. But since that is unfortunately not possible, our second best thing in a way is to create that interior cafe as a grab and go, where you can then have to go back out again with your coffee and then go sit and find a place to sit on the stairs. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, the challenge of civic buildings is you want them to be inviting and transparent, but you have certain security requirements and sometimes blast requirements that you got to hit. And those seem to be in tension at times, and the magic is how you blend the two and achieve both at the same time. So I think it certainly is a challenge, but it's also the opportunity.
But I'm happy
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if it actually is as transparent. Looking into council chambers on the second floor, great idea. But in actuality, will that happen? It'll be interesting to see this process go through. I love kind of this whole idea of this opening it up to the park. What I don't want to lose is kind of this McDowell Street as being kind of a main primary road. And, I think this actually shows it better than some of the other images where it's just kind of second nature back of house. But this might show it a little bit more transparent, whereas maybe the model doesn't. But I don't really want to forget that McDowell that's a great corner too. And how do you treat that corner, McDowell and Hargett?
That's a good point.
And also the other thing, and I'm sure y'all have talked about this, but the velocities on Hargett are different than the velocities on McDowell. And I think that, you've got vehicular velocity and you've got the pedestrian velocity and you've got kind of what the building is doing at both of those different velocities and how they interpret that. I think that's also an opportunity to kind of play to. But I agree that with Corey, is like, we don't want to we don't want Hargett to be the main show and then like McDowell to be like a complete second fiddle to that.
No, for that. I hear that. Leah, can you try to go forward to the landscape plan? If you yes.
Yeah, I was gonna supplement that as well. That, I mean, a fair portion of the amenity space and streetscape on McDowell is actually activated as well. I mean, it is a very fast road. And it's not as pleasant to spend a lot of time stopping there, but at the same time, we want to put simply, I think the landscape plan.
Skipped over it.
Eric, he's running around.
Go back a few more.
Yeah, that's fine too.
This one, yeah.
You can see it like kind of in that borderline between the streetscape requirement and the property line. We're considering a fair number of planted areas to actually act as a buffer. We're working on understanding the streetscape requirements there and making sure that we're conforming. But at this stage, we're trying to find a way to make both of those be part of the extension of Nash Square with that vegetated area and also a buffer so that it's actually pleasant to spend time on McDowell Street as well, because Target's easier to spend time on.
I think that makes sense. I think it's the right way to approach it. I mean, and I'm sure there's a lot of disagree with what I'm here to say, but I'd rather have one phenomenal facade and experience than half on either one. But I do think the right move is to create that landscape buffer on McDowell, help alleviate that velocity change that you've got from Hargett to McDowell. But I do want to kind of reiterate that, this is a civic building. This is a public building. How in the world, how do we make this an amazing pedestrian experience? And so, that's the charge. And once you get above those 3 stories, I'm being a little careful of the facade and its rigor, but at the same time, we all know that the first 40 feet of a building are the most important of what people experience. Above that, sometimes it's more important. What is the interior experience? So you've got great context and you've got the right idea. I think it's just kind of finessing it as we've been talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think these are great comments.
Yeah, to that point, Chad, I would be interested in seeing some of the context of the pedestrian activity today, and then what we think it's going to be when you add on, the Union Bus Station terminal. You've got the project, here's an observer site. It just seems like the context of the development happening around the site is so important to the development of this site and how that's going to change the nature of the way that people get around downtown. When you think about the level of pedestrian activity today, it's completely different from what it'll be in 5, 10, 20 years. And so, to your point, Chad, just thinking about where are people going to and from right now? Where do we think they're going to be going to and from in the future? I'm sure y'all are starting to think about this already, but I do think that affects how you approach both of these facades on these 2 main streets and just how we think about, again, the context surrounding the project. How can we weave that into the design of the project itself and where we feel downtown is going?
Absolutely. I think that's what makes this such an important pedestrian space. Besides the function of the building, it's the context within which the building lies. So absolutely. Thank you, Jake.
Unfortunately, we have a windowless across the street that doesn't help the whole situation.
We'll carry the weight for the AT&T building.
Yeah. If only.
Hey, Lee, could you go back to 89?
Yes.
So I love this diagram because it's, from the pedestrian landscape perspective, it's kind of showing an opening between these West Tower and East Tower. And I guess I'm just wondering, I see the carving out of the street face on this tower, on this East Tower. But I'm just where is that going and how is it going to, do we know what's happening with the West Tower? Because right now, the way that it's carved out, I feel like I'm wondering where that's where that's taking people, and if that's a kind of, if I want that to be a true diagram, can you talk about that?
I mean, I think, you know, the West Tower's footprint, I don't have that like information right in front of me, but like the space for that in the use of that in the second building is going to be different. I mean, there's more space on the west lot and the building will have a different use. But yeah, the intent is that most of the civic plaza that's supposed to happen between those two buildings would be happening on that site in lieu of this one. Because this building's gonna have entirely city staff housed in the public access to the council chambers in the public service area, et cetera. I believe the west building in the master plan will have quite a different kind of a mixed use kind of situation. So it was hard to try to design a public realm responding to a future grand plaza that we don't know when it's going to happen yet. That's been challenging. So we're trying to set the stage to allow those things to connect across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would echo that. I think what we've been dealing a lot with is like, you know, how do you design for a second phase that you don't quite control? And I think what we're trying to do is set some tones that will sort of encourage that. In some of our early schemes, we were doing sort of like a blank wall, you know, we're just extending the podium all the way to the west. And we just felt that that would be a really discouraging gesture for the overall approach of the master plan. So we're trying to step it back and create sort of a gesture that sort of hopefully is going to be mimicked on the west side. But if not, then we're providing actually sort of the main relief within that massing. Mm-hmm. So this is at least our approach.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Can you talk about access? I see, you know, we kind of have the back access there for drive now, for utilities, those kind of things. Will this building be self-contained? Will the parking be under this building? Will we be doing anything to the existing deck to the north? Is that part of this scheme or not?
Do you want to go back to the overall AXO? Or actually just one of the, as soon as we get to a plan, we can take that conversation. Yeah, you go one further. Yeah, so the idea is currently to allocate one level of parking underneath it, and you can see here on the north towards the existing structure, we have a drive lane that sort of takes you into a back of house. The idea is that that whole area is going to be secure. So you'll be driving into sort of an open back of house situation that is contained within some sort of secure perimeter. And from there on, you'll be descending into the underground garage. And then in the back, where you have that little van parking, that is the loading and delivery area.
I unfortunately have to go, but just in kind of closing comments on my end, I mean, obviously, like, this building will represent and who and what we're going to be for the next generation. I think we all have the responsibility to do something great, and whatever that becomes, it has to be great. So just encourage you all to kind of to think about what can we do that's going to really set this building apart, make a great experience. And I think you definitely recognize the fact that this is a pedestrian thoroughfare that's really stitching the traditional downtown of Raleigh with, the warehouse district. So let's not miss the opportunity to really, make that an incredible experience and tell a story of who we are as Raleigh and where we're going. So I really appreciate the effort.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Any other thoughts from the commission?
I'll just make one final comment. Well, first of all, echoing everything that Chad said, I think Chad is speaking for all of us. We get to see a lot of projects, but not all of them have this kind of impact for this long in the civic realm. So very excited to be a part of it. And I would say just for the next round, we're not reviewing glazing today. We haven't talked about it that much, but it's something that we look at on some of our projects. And I find with these civic projects, especially where there's that much glazing on the ground floor and not so many entrances necessarily, that the nuances of the glazing, who can see in, who can see out, at what time of day, you know, how is the overhang affecting that with shadows? All that stuff becomes so much more important when you have a glass facade that's that long. So I'd love to see, you know, really get a feel for that at different times of day. What it's going to feel like to be someone walking past this building. Does it feel like an opaque wall that happens to be made of glass? Does it feel like there's kind of a conversation happening? How does that interplay with the sunlight and the rest of the site? So yeah, that could be something to come back with next time as you all get into more details of the design. But thanks for the presentation, really helpful and exciting.
Yeah, sure, happy to do it.
All right, any other comments, Commission? We're working on about 40 minutes now in our 30-minute scenario. Happy to take some more. I'll ask the applicant, Daniel, Leslie, I mean, is there anything else that you would like to hear from us or not looking at?
Leslie, is there anything we haven't covered that we're actually getting some feedback on?
I mean, I think just in general, are these alternates that we're seeking, are we working towards like an appropriate scenario? I mean, are they feeling I mean, I think a lot of your feedback has provided insight into what you think could be enhanced for sure, but does this all make sense to you as far as what we're pursuing?
I think, not speaking for all of us, but I think this whole step back and giving this more pedestrian plaza is a great thing. The question is, how does that work for 20 stories? And is there some more relief up once you start getting up above a certain level, or does the facade do something a little different to break up? I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the plaza, which in these kind of lower pedestrian level areas, which are great. I think the question for me is still kind of the massing of the building and what it does. I like the fact that it does step back, but is there other parts within the building that have some relief or not? I don't know. I think, you know, that this seems like the most thought out portion right now is the first few stories. And I look forward to kind of seeing the rest of it.
Okay, thank you for that feedback.
We'll be happy to provide some more information on the general facade thinking also on the upper tower next time.
Just to listen.
All right. No other comments. We appreciate it. I think it's a great project, and I'm just going to go Chad. I'm not going to try to regurgitate Chad's work very well. So, but it's an important building for Raleigh, and we appreciate you guys to come in front of the commission.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we agreed on the strategy.
Bye. All right. Thank you, everybody. And now that ends our business portion of the meeting. We will continue quickly. I'm not going to try to hold anybody up too long with working group reports and other business. So how about do we want to talk about Sir Walter Raleigh really quick?
Yeah, I'll make this a quick thing, but I emailed with the committee earlier today to say that we have the go-ahead from Peter Lamb and the Wolves to engage their services for some recorded music to open and close our event, to have some of that feel of what the live event brought. So we're ready to move forward with that. We have a final design created from Lincoln Hancock for the certificate. And so I will be moving forward with him soon to get the names of the winners on those, and we can get that printed as soon as possible. And then I got some good news today from RTN that they're going to be helping us to do the technical portion of the video editing. So city staff like myself that aren't quite as experienced in that realm have a big burden lifted off our shoulders. So big thanks to RTN for that. And Katie Dombrowski, our community engagement specialist, is going to provide assistance if anyone needs help creating videos. So as you all start creating, those of you who have signed up to present for some of the awards, if any of you need help with the filming process, let me know and I can get you coordinated with Katie to help on that front. And then same thing will go for our winners as they create their videos. But that's pretty much it for the update. If anybody has any questions regarding that, feel free to ask now or email me after this meeting and I can chat in more detail.
Were there still time if somebody wants to be involved in the committee or speak? There's still availability for people if they want to do that. So feel free to speak up or let Lee know. Chris,
Lee, has the date for the awards been set? Is it now?
Oh, yes, I am sorry. The date has been set for December 16th. So everything's going to be recorded ahead of that date. But that's the sort of go live moment.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, thank you.
All right. I don't believe we want to talk about high impact, high visibility tonight. We are setting up, if there, again, there's room to be on that committee. If there's people that want to be involved in that, feel free to reach out. Candace is putting some times together to meet. So feel free to get with her directly or Lee or I, and we'll get you plugged in. So with that, I appreciate everybody hanging out there tonight. It was kind of a long one, but I think it was important. I think some of these projects, like the first two that we saw, I don't want to be the person holding them up or the commission holding projects up. I think what we need to do and what we try to do, even with this project, was set a precedence that, we need that information. This is something like that we told them up front that we would like this information, and we expect that they're going to bring this information. If they don't, we need to have them come back until they can bring that stuff so we can see it. So I appreciate you all with your comments with that. If there's no other business, the only other thing is the approval of the meeting minutes from October 15th. Is that right?
Chair, if it's all right with you, I think that we might save that for the next meeting.
Let's do that. Yeah, great. Is there anything else anybody else wants to add before we close? All right. That being said, I appreciate everybody hanging out and the great feedback tonight. This is a great night for Raleigh. So appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Corey.
See you all.
Thanks, Lee.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.